Welcome back, everybody, to the Only Podcast. This is Chris Vanini, your host, as always, and back from the dead is OnlyColors.com co-managing editor Austin Smith, who
I'm
was
back.
busy the last few weeks, and I want to thank Adam Ruff for filling in. I'm sure we'll have Adam back in the future here too, but Austin's been away for a few weeks, so I figured we'd do a two-man deal here since you fine listeners have not been able to hear Austin's great analysis of everything going on. And actually, for the first time in quite a long time, especially for you, there's positive things to say about what's going on and regarding some MSU sports. There's actually some wins to talk about.
Right. I don't know if I should apologize for coming back now that we're actually starting to win some games again here.
Speaking of apologies, we will touch on that whole Dan Dakich thing because I know that's just on the tip of the tongue of everybody. But I'm going to hold that to the end so you fine listeners can either fast forward to the end if you want that or listen until then. But I figure stuff that's going on the court is more important, and we will get to that. But to open, well, first off, how you doing, Austin? I didn't really fully introduce you.
I'm good. It's good to be back now that, the first month of 2017 was a little busy on my end. Not that you would know it from the amount and unnecessary amount that I tweet or write or any of that good stuff.
At AC Smith 06, right?
That's me. Yeah, that's me. So yeah, I mean, it's all been good, man. It's been nice to watch this team kind of pick things back up. Signing day was fun, really super eventful. Pulled together a pretty nice little class there, so I don't think I've been on since then. But no, all in all, man, it's not a brutal winter here in Chicago. I don't know what it's like down there in Dallas, but I can't imagine it's too bad.
It was 45 today. It was tough.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's just, I feel so bad for you.
Yeah, well, it actually it rained, and I actually needed it to rain because it hadn't rained in forever, and the yard was getting kind of dry. But
oh, jeez, such an adult.
But actually,
got a yard.
As they, I used to love rain as a kid, and I do when I'm inside. I love when there's a storm going on. But when you're a dog owner, that totally changes. And
multiple dog owner.
The dirt, the dirt down here. I don't know if it's just this area. It's a lot more. It's a lot. The mud's a lot thicker than it was up in Michigan. So dogs are coming in with just paws of mud that I gotta pull out. It's just, it sucks.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, so that's that. But it'll be 60 degrees tomorrow, and so I'm looking for
a
lot of sun. Yeah, it's nice down here. Nice. So, but to start off this podcast, we're going to start off kind of where Adam and I started last week, which is regarding multiple sexual assault, sexual harassment lawsuits involving Michigan State. I don't know if we mentioned it last time or not, but 3 unnamed players and an unnamed staffer were suspended. We said we weren't going to speculate on who that was, but in the past week, MSU did suspend. Its recruiting coordinator, Curtis Blackwell. They would not say if it was related to this incident, but Chris Allard, the Free Press, did confirm that D'Antonio and all 9 full-time assistants remain employed and not suspended. So take that for what you will. And regarding the big gymnastics thing going on, head coach Kathy Clages retired just the other day, and there's been, I think, another allegation of possibly downplaying some stuff going on with a former MSU physician trainer who is involved in a pretty big sexual assault scandal. Again, not going to totally speculate on everything until the processes kind of play out, at which point I and other people on this podcast will give our full reactions once everything comes out. But until then, I would just say that I hope the proper steps are being taken, and I hope justice is taken for whatever that will end up meaning. Austin, you weren't here last week. Did you have anything you wanted to say about this? Because obviously this is far more important than anything that happens on a playing field, and we all want the truth to come out and the right things to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton to share because, like you said, we don't want to speculate and drag anyone's name through the mud unnecessarily. I would just say more than anything else, I hope that it seems like Michigan State is handling everything well to this point. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to tell when you don't have all of the information that the authorities have, but at least with the football related part of this, I just, more than anything, I hope that, like you said, those involved are punished accordingly, and that if there are victims that come out, that they get what they deserve, I guess. I just hope that everything is taken seriously under the law, and everything is vetted thoroughly. I think, like you said, off the field, off the court, this is more about people than it is about anything regarding sports. So I hope that they're thorough. I hope that everything is handled correctly and properly and timely, and that, regardless of who it is or who's involved, that those responsible are held accountable. And that's as far as I think I can really go without, knowing more.
And also, Mark Hollis has pulled out of a nationwide trip he was going to take as part of the NCAA selection committee. He has pulled out of that to return to East Lansing to deal with the matters that are going on. He was on Sirius XM radio the other day, was asked about both cases, did not say anything other than to refer to the statements that he had released, and that the processes were still ongoing. And so that's where that is with that. Moving on to on the field stuff, basketball team. Last time we talked, Adam and I, they were in a bad spot coming off a 29-point embarrassing loss to Michigan. But they were, and basically I said that made the Iowa and the Ohio State games at home, the next two, basically must wins, because they hadn't proven they could beat a superior team. And they got them. They got both wins, similar final scores, similar, both games kind of similar how they played out, with MSU playing a better team in the first half, but either trailing or not winning by as much as they should, then pulling away in the second half. Iowa was a 77-66 score. Ohio State was a 74-66 score. Austin, you mentioned you didn't see the Iowa game, but like I said, it played out pretty much like the Ohio State team. So now as you look at, as we talked a week ago, MSU was losers of 5 of their last 8. Now after these 2 wins, they have won 4 of their last 5, with that one loss being the really bad loss at Michigan. So after the Ohio State game, how do you kind of see the way this team's playing right now? And we'll talk about bubble stuff at the end after this. But in terms of just generally how they're playing, what are your kind of general thoughts right here?
Yeah, I'm going to take one quick step back. I think the last time I was on here, we kind of looked at this chunk, this 5-game stretch, Michigan, Nebraska, Michigan, Iowa, Ohio State. And the two of us said that you needed to, at the time you were sitting there at 12-9, not a pretty record. We're thinking you got to go minimum 3-2. And you have to be sitting at 15-11 to even have a chance. They did one better, 4-1. The one was ugly, but the other 4, I thought were all pretty decent wins. I thought this team is frustrating in some ways. It's funny. I saw somebody say, I can't tell if I love this team or if I hate this team. And it's sort of as extreme as those opinions are, it's just as extreme as they play. Like you saw it several times last night. Just this team is so streaky, not only throughout the season. If you look at you break down their record, they've had these huge swings of wins and losses, but even within a game,
yeah,
I mean, they got up by double digits even within a half. I mean, they get up by 12 points. It seems like, you have the chance to really put your foot down and get up by 18, 20 and, drive the stake in and knock the other team kind of out of it. They're on the, it's Ohio State. They're on the road. They're shallow. They're desperate. But like, Lyle's not playing it 100%. And you have a chance to really bury them early. And instead, they kind of took their foot off the gas and let Ohio State start making some shots. Those same issues that have come up all year: perimeter defense, lack of size on the interior, and especially on the defensive glass in this one, came back to haunt them. I mean, when they're making shots, when Alvin Ellis is hitting 5 of 5, his first 5 threes, they're going to be able to build up those leads, but they're just as prone to giving up big leads on the other end. So one thing that in terms of how I feel moving forward, if you look at the next 5 games, their last 5 here.
Yeah, last 5 are at Purdue, home against Nebraska, home against Wisconsin, at Illinois, at Maryland.
I think realistically, if they can win, if they can go 2 of 3, if they just beat Nebraska and Illinois and win the first game of the Big Ten tournament, even if they don't win that, I think at 18 of 14 with how bad.
Yeah, we're kind of getting into.
Okay.
I want to hold off on that. Got to tease it a little bit.
All right, we'll wait. We'll wait.
I basically agree with you on that point, and we'll repeat it in a few minutes. But
we'll get back to it. Sorry. So I think one of the things that's jumping out at me in the immediate future is that Izzo is not cutting down his rotation whatsoever. Usually this is the time of year where that starts to happen. And if anything, it felt like last night he expanded it by letting Matt Van Dyke play, extended minutes for what feels like the first time in a while.
Yeah, he had 3 minutes, and Kyle Ahrens had 3 minutes. But no, I'm sorry, that's the Iowa game. Van Dyke played 3 minutes, and Ahrens played 10 minutes.
Yeah,
so, those are two guys who you barely ever see.
Yeah, those are the 2 dudes. That's as far as the bench will stretch, really. And it's still surprising me. Like, I don't mind him stealing minutes here and there, but generally you want to see it's your 8th guy stealing minutes, maybe your 9th guy, but he's still going 10 deep here, man.
Yeah.
And 3 of them last night. You have Van Dyke. Well, Goins you have to play because he's kind of your backup center. But if you pile Van Dyke, Ahrens, Goins, and McQuaid together, you're looking at a collective 1 for 3 from the field, 3 total points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists, and 5 fouls and 2 turnovers. Like, they're just bodies. They're just eating up space, it seems like. And Goins, I get, you have to play Kenny Goins.
Yeah,
he's the only other guy besides
Goins is pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is more of an outlier for him than the other 3, but like, that's 3 guys that just aren't bringing much of anything beyond literally stealing minutes to the table. And I think it's just a necessary evil. I keep harping on this, not only on this podcast, but just in writing and stuff. But it'll be interesting to see if he tightens it up at all. I think you're really kind of getting down to the end here. And if anything, like I said, he seems to expand his rotation more than anything. But it's funny because you usually look at the team that leads the nation in bench minutes and you think, oh, that's a deep team.
Yeah.
I would not qualify this as a deep team. It's just a team with a lot of guys that play.
Yeah, I think part of the tightening of the rotation part is that they have so many wing guys and not
that's
many
true.
big men. So Van Dyke's playing and Ahrens is basically playing power forward because they need to give Goins or Ward a breather, although none of them were really in foul trouble up until the end of the game. And Ahrens was playing valuable minutes and hit a 3. But
yeah, he hit that big 3. That was the one that kind of finally, they went up 12 with like 3.5 left.
Yeah,
kind of a dagger.
I mean, the places that you cut, I mean, maybe you take out Ahrens or Van Dyke or something, but I mean, between everybody else, you got a bunch of guys who probably deserve to play. So it's just a very unbalanced team with a ton of wing guys and not
to that
and no big guys, which
nothing else.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to shorten it up a little bit, but
right.
And again, part of the reason I made the point in the Ohio State game is that Ohio State is like 300 something in bench minutes, and that's why Thompson and Tate getting in foul trouble was so big because they had to go to guys who don't play big minutes. But part of the reason MSU is so big in bench minutes is because there's not much of a drop off. There's physical depth, but there's not talent depth. Like if you there's not a huge drop off, but there's not a ton to drop off from, unless you're except for a handful of guys. But going from Aaron Harris to Alvin Ellis is not much of a.
Outside of Bridges and Ward, you don't really take a step back.
And Cassius Winston, depending on the day, sometimes he's a complete liability like the Michigan game, or sometimes he's totally going off. So, but yeah, Bridges and Ward. But other than that, guys can come and go. And you mentioned streaky. I mean, this team several times in the second half of the Ohio State game, they get up double digits, and you think they're about to put it away, and then just 3 bad possessions in a row or something. They leave a guy open on 3. They commit 3 off-ball offensive fouls in a row, 2 on screens, and just mistakes like that are just. I mean, they have 5 turnovers in the first half, but 11 in the second half. So that kind of, a chunk of those were offensive fouls. So it kind of came back to get them on that. So in the Ohio State, let's talk about probably the player story of the game was Alvin Ellis, who goes 6 for 9 from 3. He hit his first 5 within the first 2 minutes. He has started to really kind of come into his own and provide kind of what he needs to provide. And he's a rare senior on this team. I mean, I'm starting to wonder if, or at least I'm thinking, in games, their best lineup appears to be Winston, Ellis, Langford, Bridges, Ward. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the best 5. I mean, it's funny because you came into this year, or at least I did, thinking that it would be those 4 freshmen and Aaron Harris would be the best 5. I mean, you thought it's definitely the most talent, it's the most athleticism, it's the best shooting 5 you could put out there. But now Alvin Ellis has really taken Aaron Harris's spot.
I mean, his point totals in the last 5 since the Michigan win: 6 points, 11 points, 9 points, 3 points, 18 points. Shooting 1 for 2, 4 for 5, 3 for 6, 1 for 5, and then 6 for 11. So he's starting to kind of, I think, find a bit of a role there. And he's not a sharpshooter by any means, but he's showing the ability to at least that he can hit there. And Aaron Harris has Aaron Harris feels so. I've said it before. He just, whenever you watch him play, he just kind of feels like he's not part of the offense. Like it just feels like he's off doing his own thing, and it just never totally seems to fit. And I don't know if not starting him would make him lose focus of any kind, and that's why maybe he would continue to start. And he definitely has higher ceiling than Ellis, but in a vacuum, I'm starting to wonder if Ellis should be in a starter's role, or at least playing more minutes. And I think he is going to be playing more minutes. He's played over 20 minutes 5 of the last 7 games, or 6 of the last 7.
Yeah, I mean, he's gotten more minutes than Harris. I'm just kind of flipping back and forth here. He's clearly playing better of the 2. It's funny. I'm looking at Aaron Harris's entire game log right now, and he only had 3 non-conference games where he scored in the single digits. Contrast that with his Big Ten play. He has 3 games where he has scored 10 or more. I mean, he's been bad. He just hasn't been good.
He's got 5. 1, 2,
5
4.
in Big Ten play?
Yeah, 4 double digits. The Ohio State, at Nebraska, Northwestern, and at Minnesota.
And he only scored 6 points last night.
No, he hit 6. Oh, wait, you talking buckets?
I was talking about Aaron Harris.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm stupid. I was looking at Alvin Ellis's thing.
No,
you're right. Keep going. Ignore me.
No, Harris only has 3 games in the Big Ten where he scored double digits. I mean, that's your starting 2 guard. That is supposed to be, this was the guy that everybody pegged.
He's supposed to be the scorer. Yeah.
He's supposed to be the scorer. He's supposed to be the unapologetic gunner. that just gets buckets. He's the guy who's supposed to be able to create off the dribble. It's supposed to be able to shoot well from three. And really, for most of the non-con, did. I mean, he had a 31-pointer against Florida Gulf Coast. He saved Michigan State in that game. He had 20 against Tennessee Tech. He's in the teens against St. John's, scored 14 against Duke, 13 against Wichita. Like, he's a good player. He's talented. You see it. You've seen it last year. You saw it earlier this year, but he just doesn't, like, I think you're right. He just doesn't look engaged. And I don't know who to, it's hard to place blame on anybody but him. But listen, it's too late. It's crazy. What's crazy to me is usually there's one guy, and maybe that's Ellis this year, but it seems like recently there's one guy towards the end of, as a senior, towards the end of the Big Ten season on Michigan State, who sort of realized, like, oh crap, like this is it. Like, I got to get moving. I got to start busting my butt. Forbes, I thought Costello had a great great season down the stretch last year. I mean, you said Travis Trice was all season a couple of years ago, but you tend to get more out of those guys. Brandon Dawson, I mean, yeah, and that's, like I said, maybe that's Ellis this year. Whoever it's going to be, they need to show themselves here pretty soon, because Michigan State needs one of these wings. I've been saying it all season. It's like one of these guys just has
25 games left.
Just go. Yeah, I know, but it's like hard to bank on that happening. But one of them's just got to take over, and just, I mean, I know you're always going to defer to Ward and Bridges, but like, there's got to be that third option. And if it's Ellis, fine, that's great. He seems as confident as ever right now, and he's never lacked for confidence. But hey, man, I'm all for it. If he's playing better, I hope Izzo finally puts his foot down and just, it seems like he's already starting to play him more. I hope he just continues to do so. So yeah, Harris has been disappointing, but Ellis has had a better senior year than I was expecting, for sure.
Yeah, it's quite a story. A guy who everybody thought was going to transfer multiple times, and he didn't, and now you can make the case that he should be starting. So another example of stick-to-itiveness. Another guy along the lines of Ellis, that Mike Keebler.
Loved Keebler.
He wasn't that last year. He became their defensive stopper and got put in certain minutes. I think not a star guy, but a guy who had a role at the end.
You've got
Colby Wollenman, kind of a similar deal.
Colby Wollenman, Austin Thornton was
Thornton. That's a good one. Thornton's a good one there. Yeah. So there's these guys who, like you said, they get to their senior year and they stick around, and Izzo. When you stick around with Izzo, you usually figure it out by the end, and some of these guys seem to have. You mentioned being streaky in Bridges. I noticed really in that Ohio State game, it's so obvious with this team when they are focused and when they are not, because they'll go on a stretch of scoring on 5 of 6 possessions that look great, and then they'll just have 3 just ugly ones. Like, they don't have the talent to just pack it in and get buckets or pull out a win. I mean, we see it all year. Northeastern, Florida Gulf Coast, some of the other games at the beginning of the year, and you saw it with Bridges. There were several instances in the Ohio State game where he gets the ball passed to him beyond the 3-point line, doesn't dribble, doesn't do anything, just spots up and shoots 3 and misses. And he also wasn't getting his hand up, again, defending 3-pointers on the perimeter. And Izzo made it, and I actually tweeted, and then Izzo said at halftime, they got to give it in the post more and get him the ball in his hands and get him moving, get him engaged. And there was a spot in the second half where he gets the ball in the corner, and it looks like he's about to just spot up and shoot a 3 again. He pump fakes, dribbles in, and gets a dunk out of it. And it's like, that's the play that he can do. He has the talent to just take over. And I mean, he finished, I think, with another double-double that just kind of
17 and 11.
Yeah, and it's just when he's focused, you can tell. When everybody else is focused, you can tell. Winston's another example, but in Nairn as well. He doesn't obviously bring as much offensively, but you can tell when there'll be a possession where MSU will just pass around the 3-point line for 25 seconds. They get to 5 seconds and then hurry up a shot, and it's just like a wasted. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's just a complete waste of time. And this team can't take a knee really, basically, and you can see
No,
it
they really
in
can't.
every game. They go up double digits, it gets cut to one bucket, it goes back and forth, and just this team more than I think maybe any other MSU team I've seen is so streaky because it's so just watching them, you can tell when they're engaged and when they're really running stuff and when they're not.
Yeah, and I think some of that has to do with, outside of Ward, is the lack of, I've again said it all year, but the lack of size really hurts this team, especially when Bridges is not being active on the glass.
And when he shoots a three, when he shoots a three, that's one less big body to get a rebound. Especially when there was a spot when Van Dyke. Sorry, I keep interrupting you. There was a spot where Van Dyke was the center basically, and Bridges shoots a three, and it's like, okay, if you don't make it, you ain't getting the rebound. It's
right.
You have no chance at it. So it's kind of a give and take when he shoots those. He's made them at a decent clip, and could have said the same thing when Adrian Payne started taking 3-pointers. But this team, especially when there's no other big men to go get the rebound.
Yeah, with those, well, I mean, at least when you had Payne, you also had Brandon Dawson, who was, he might have only been 6'6", but he could jump over the backboard if you asked him to. Gary Harris was a great rebounding wing. They had a lot of just more size. They had Costello coming off the bench. I mean, that was a much bigger team. But, when Bridges, it's funny. You look at his line from last night, 1 for 5 from 3, 6 of 13 from the field. Outside of those threes, he went 5 of 8.
Mm-hmm.
Shot over 50% from the field. He, like you said, is good enough. He's athletic enough. His post moves and his touch around the rim are great, especially for his size and the fact he's only a freshman. That's what he needs to be doing for this team. It's great if he can shoot threes at a 40% clip. But listen, that's not and he's playing like a freshman in this regard, because that's not where this team needs you. All these other guys can shoot threes. Yes, Aaron Harris is streaky, but he can shoot threes. Cassius Winston can shoot threes. Ellis can shoot threes.
Langford's at 47% leading the team.
Right. I mean, these are the guys that this team doesn't really play, and it's because they don't have the other depth at the bigs. They can't play. No one's really playing in their position per se. So, I mean, even down to Ward, I mean, no one's really 3 through 5 in this team is a complete jumble. So it's hard to get on him too much, because I don't think he was expecting to have to be a big. I don't think he came to Michigan State planning to play at 4.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's just got to do it. This is what this team needs from him. And he when he did it in the second half last night, you saw what he can do, man. He's just so dynamic. And that 17 and 11 was, like you said, ho hum. I didn't even realize he had a double-double until I checked the box score after the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things that, I wish I could say I thought he was gonna do a lot better next year at Michigan State, but I have a feeling he'll be working on it in the pros. But it's just awareness and knowing kind of situational basketball, understanding your surroundings and your team, and just getting a little bit better than that. And it's one of the things that with this team, there's so many young guys, and they're in such a weird space roster wise, and they lack a senior leader. I think, I'm sure we'll touch on Dockage here, but he did say last night, one thing I did agree with him on, he said, if your coach is your leader, you're in trouble. Mm-hmm. And he said that, he nailed it. And Izzo has said himself many, many times that all of his best teams were his player-led teams. And, you saw it last year with Denzel Valentine. The team was great up until the tournament, like one of the best teams in the country. This team doesn't have that guy. And I think it comes back to hurt him, and all those different factors kind of factor into why they're so streaky and so volatile.
Yeah, I mean, the offense looks good. The offense looks bad, depending on if they're taking care of the ball. I mean, they're number 28th in effective field goal percentage. They shoot the ball well, but they're 90th in efficiency because they're 321st in turnover rate. It's and a lot of that is so many of those turnovers are just shot clock violation or offensive fouls or just careless passes to nobody. It's not like they're playing a press team all the time and it's just forcing turnovers.
Right.
A lot of the turnovers are just careless, and they don't set screens sharp. They don't do a lot of other stuff sharp. But I mean, it is what it is at this point 5 games left in the season. So, yeah, 5 games left. They said it's 16-10, 8-5 in the Big Ten. You just said it. I think 3 wins should definitely get them in. 3 wins would get them 19 and say they regular season wise, 3 wins would be 19 and 15. That should be 19 and 19 and 12.
19 and 12 regular season.
There'll be no problems there. Win 2, sit at 18 and 13. It's close. If you lose a Big Ten tournament opener, 18 and 14, I think that would tie the most losses ever for a team to get in. Although this is a very weak bubble, and MSU's RPI is okay, and its RPI strength of schedule is very good.
It's just going to get better too.
Yeah, so I think 2. If you're counting the Big Ten tournament, if you finish 2 and 4. It could go either way. If you get at least 3 wins, no matter what happens elsewhere, I think you're good. What do you think?
I think that's a pretty fair assessment. I think 3 wins. If you're looking at a bare minimum, you have to be. If we're just looking at the regular season, you have to beat Nebraska. You have to beat Illinois. And if you're able to steal any of those other games, because if you think about it, if you go 3-3, if you include the first game in the Big Ten, it doesn't matter which 3 of those games you win.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
I think if they were to
because either it's a big upset win, or it's avoiding a Big Ten tournament upset loss.
Exactly. It's exactly it. So I think from here on out, you have 6 chances to get 3 wins. They can't afford. I mean, unless you're going to beat 2 of these ranked teams coming down the stretch here, you're not going to be able to afford a loss to Illinois or to Nebraska. And those are teams that have upset good teams.
Nebraska's, I think, won.
Exactly.
I think Nebraska's won like last 2 or 3 at Breslin.
Yeah. Yeah, and they've beaten good teams this year. I mean, even when Michigan State kind of played them earlier, they got punched in the mouth a couple times and fought them back. So it's up in the air. In terms of, I still think Purdue's a horrible matchup. I'm sure we'll talk about it in a second, but I haven't been blown away by Maryland, and I think Wisconsin has shown some flaws here lately as well. I think, and I've been on the Purdue is the worst matchup possible for Michigan State bandwagon all season. Mm-hmm. But I think those last 4 are all winnable games. I think Purdue technically, I think they could win, but I wouldn't bank on it. I don't think they will. But, go 3-3 down the stretch here, see what happens. And I tell you what, going 4-1 in this last 5 in this little section against the mid-tier, lower tier of the Big Ten, that was huge. It was really, really big. I mean, as great as it would have been to beat Michigan twice, you get in 4 of those 5, but they're in a good spot. They're not in a bad place. I mean, it's funny because normally I feel like I'd be sweating a little more, but with the bubble being so weak and the strength of schedule and just, I feel like all of the years of Michigan State playing these tough teams and building up their reputation and having Izzo as the head coach and, making no apologies for the way they played. All of that like goodwill that they've built up, they're going to cash in this year one way or another if they can even just put themselves in the conversation. And they're very close to doing that.
Yeah. I mean, the bracketologists kept showing faith in them. They haven't been out in any of the projections I've seen ever. The last one, I think before this past week was, I think Lenardi had him as a 10 and Jerry Palm had him as an 11 playing a play-in game. So they seem to at least that reputation counts for something there. And it's interesting because I said at the beginning of the year that this team was going to beat some teams it shouldn't and lose to some teams it shouldn't. And that has not been the case at all. I was completely wrong on that. Other than they lost to Northeastern, which they shouldn't, and then Penn State was, kind of maybe could go either way. But other than that, they've lost every game you expected them to lose. and won just about every game we expected them to win. So it's kind of you wouldn't expect a streaky team like that to have such a group of outcomes,
So much
but that's
chalk.
the case it is. Now looking at these last 5, they're only actually favored to win one of them in KenPom. That's 74% against Nebraska. The Illinois game actually has them losing by 1 point, 46%, because MSU's quite a bit lower in the KenPom rankings than they are in the RPI, and Illinois has surprisingly been higher than in KenPom than I thought. I mean, they're 14-12 and 4-9 in the Big Ten. They haven't really been much of anything special, but it's a road game, and outside of the Nebraska game and half of the Minnesota game, they haven't played well on the road really much. So that's always going to be another factor. I think they can get Wisconsin at home. KenPom has Wisconsin by 3, MSU with a 40% chance. So I do think that's a possibility, but it's going to be close down the stretch here. They've won 4 or 5, but we've seen that when this team is on, they can be pretty good, but when they're off, they can be so far off. And
Yeah, that pendulum could swing back really quickly.
That's what they were against Michigan. I guess the good news for them is they appear to be healthy. It appears that the illnesses have gone through. No one's hurting any big injury, so they're other than the two guys out for the year. But in terms of the team now, they are what they are. So
they took Nick Ward's hair, but that's about it.
Yeah, and so Nick Ward, Purdue. Let's talk about that briefly. We kind of know what Purdue is. They're a big team with Haas and Swanigan inside. Swanigan's up for Player of the Year. They hit some threes in the game in East Lansing, and MSU kept it close for a half, but got in foul trouble and could not keep it close in the second. They have like a 10-point lead or something in the first half, and then everybody got hurt, and they put in Van Dyke, and Purdue tied it up.
Yep.
I think Purdue wins handily. They can't stop those two guys. Haas isn't even that good of a player, but against MSU, he's a monster because he's 6 inches taller than anybody who's matching up with him. So I think Purdue kind of rolls pretty easily. We'll probably podcast before the Nebraska game next Thursday. So let me know what do you think of the Purdue matchup?
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible matchup. I've said that all year. I'm a doomsday guy when it comes to playing Purdue. I think if State keeps it close, I'll feel pretty good. It's just a bad matchup. I mean, when you play a team that has one of the best players in the entire country, that's a big, and then his backup is also 7 feet tall, and you surround both of them with a bunch of.
Haas is 7'2".
7'2". I'm 2 inches below how big he is, and I'm saying 7 feet. It's unbelievable. His backup's 7 feet too, and with a bunch of plus shooters up, which is something Michigan State hasn't been able to guard all year. I mean, it's a nightmare scenario. I think the way they have to approach it, and they kind of did it last time, but I think you have to guard Swanigan with Miles Bridges, and I kind of think that you have to. I think this is one of those games, and I know he did it against Iowa. I kind of think Nick Ward would be best served coming off the bench in this one. I think you need him out there against Haas. I'm more concerned about that than I am against him out there against Biggie, because really? He's not going to chase Big. I am because
I mean, there's two different. I'm kind of depends on the side of the ball. I think Ward defending Swanigan is a tougher, but Ward could do absolutely nothing against Haas in their when he had the ball. When a guy's bigger than him, he's
But
stuck.
You know what? The way I look at it against Purdue is I would rather make them shoot the lights out again from 3 than beat me getting easy buckets on the inside. So with that being said, I would put Bridges on Biggie because I think he can just stick with him better. He's more athletic. He's not going to get winded as easily as Ward would. And then I would want Ward out there on Haas because you try to get Haas into foul trouble, keep him on the bench, and trouble him with size. Kenny Goins, I mean, I could guard him as well as Kenny Goins and Matt Van Dyke can. I mean, it's just a joke. He's, like you said, he's So Kenny Goins is generously listed at 6'6". Generously. He is giving up 8 inches to Isaac Haas. I would rather at least have my 6'8", 6'9" guy out there with long arms, kind of at least troubling him, maybe fronting him in the post, whatever it is. But you saw it the first game. I think Haas missed like 2 shots, got fouled a million times, didn't even play that much. So I don't know if that'll happen, but I think you can match yourself up better. And then offensively, I don't know. I mean, I guess they have to be able to shoot the ball. They have to play efficient. They got to shoot the lights out. Otherwise, they're just not going to have enough. So try to get Biggie and Haas into foul trouble, and try to shoot the lights out, and hope Purdue pulls a Purdue and loses one they should win at home.
Yeah, I mean, I look at foul trouble and turnovers.
Yeah, turnovers. Definitely another huge
Goins and Ward were just a mess in the last game because of fouls. Could never get anything going. And then the turnovers, which is what this team does, and it'll be on the road against a pretty good defensive team in a tough environment. Can they take care of the ball? Probably not, based on everything that's happened this year. But I think that's something that's going to have to go in their favor for them to to get that. So
it'd be a huge win if they could get it, but I'd take my chances against the other 2 ranked teams they're playing before Purdue.
Yeah, so let's I take it we're both picking Purdue in this game.
Yeah, I'm going with Purdue.
I am too. Ken Palm has them by 12. So let's finish with the super big issue that was a national media story, and that is Dan Dakich. So I didn't totally know how this started, but I noticed when MSU played Iowa, there is a BTN analyst who sounds just like Dakich. And I keep
Crispin.
Okay, it's Crispin. He sounds just like Dakich. And that's not a good or bad thing. Just sounds just like him. A lot of people tweeted at Dakich thinking that he was covering the game. And Dakich, what he does on Twitter is he just trolls a lot of people. And he did that, and apparently he had been, and made a comment or two about MSU students who couldn't get into U of M or whatever, doing his radio gig, shock jock thing. So Izzo starts chanting, "We hate Dakich" at free throws, and Izzo wants to know what's up at halftime. Also, speaking of Dakich, he said that Ellis got pulled by Izzo after he made his 5 threes. And before he even said it, I said, because people on Twitter were saying, why did Izzo pull him? I said Izzo did not pull him. Ellis signaled to come out because I saw it happen, and he did. Then Dakich brought it up in the broadcast. So in the halftime interview, asked why the woman sideline reporter asks Izzo about pulling Ellis. And Izzo says he was huff and wind. He had to come out and tell Dakich that. I don't know how Izzo knew that. I don't know if he just assumed that Dakich was the one who said that, or if someone told him or what. But that was weird. So then, apparently at halftime, Izzo brings up the chants for whatever reason. And players showed the Dan Dakich tweets to Izzo, which means that the players were aware of them, as it appears most of the MSU community was. Izzo is pissed, calls out Dakich after the game, says, yes, why would ESPN hire someone like that, especially when his kid goes to U of M and he's calling the games, and just complete lack of professionalism. And Dakich apparently said he called Izzo Wednesday morning and they're clearing the air or whatever, but it was a whole big thing, blew up. My take on Dakich is 2 things. One, I really like him as an in-game color commentator. He explains the plays well, the purpose behind them, how a coach would approach a situation. I find that interesting. Joe Toohey said he ignores statistical evidence and is a buffoon or something like that. I guess I can't speak to stats because I don't know how often. I haven't really paid attention to how often Dakich uses stats, but I think he generally calls good. I think he generally calls a good game. Sometimes some people think he isn't always neutral. I always thought he generally has been, or sometimes he might pick a side or something. I don't have a huge problem with that. I'd rather the announcer be into it than not into it. I mean, it's not like it affects the game or anything. But so I generally on TV think Dockich is pretty good. But when you get into what he does on Twitter and what he does on the radio, his radio personality comes out. He hosts a show in Indianapolis, and he becomes the shock jock troll guy, and everybody falls for it. When he's had a thing about NBA players not like working hard or something, and comparing it to people who do roofs and construction. It was a whole big weird thing, and he searches his name on Twitter to find out when people say Dockich and replies to them like just grow up, man. You're a former coach. You represent ESPN. You've got this platform. Just kind of be professional about it. But instead, on Twitter and radio, he decides to go the trolling type of Skip Bayless route, and it draws a big reaction from people, which is the point. So it's like he's got two different personalities, and if he wasn't on Twitter doing the radio show, I think the perception of him would be a lot better. But the negative always outweighs any positive. So that's my thoughts on Dockich. What do you think? I'm wondering if you disagree, because we often agree on a lot of stuff on this podcast, I know. And I know if Joe was here, Joe would be going off on Dockich. And it's totally fine if you do or if you feel that way. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that whole thing?
You know, it's actually funny because coming into this year, I never really had a problem with him. I mean, he always kind of sounds like this, like something's like he's exasperated over every single thing that's going on. Which that was my only issue with him coming into this year. It wasn't really with his takes or with. I actually thought he's pretty informative. Like when he goes out and he does the on-court stuff.
Yeah, I like that stuff.
It's a neat little gig, like you know, it's his little shtick or whatever. But like you said, I think this year, like that shock jock thing is really sort of tainted how I watch him. And also, what really turned me on him was when he was calling so I guess it was really only like a month, not even a month ago, but when he was calling the IU game, when it was Michigan State and IU. I mean, I know he's an Indiana guy. I mean, he went to school there, if I remember correctly. He was an assistant coach there. I think he was the interim coach for 2 games. Actually, I just read this. He was interim coach there for 2 games.
He was the interim coach of the final game of the 2007-2008 season when MSU beat him by like 50.
Yeah, and they lost both games he coached. They lost the last game, or they lost the Big Ten tournament game, and then lost the NCAA tournament game. So 0-2 as an IU head coach, but still, I never really had any issues with. He's obviously an intelligent guy. He's been doing it. He coached Bowling Green for like 10 years. Smart guy, but when he was calling that game, he was just so. It seemed like he was so obviously in it for IU, and he just would not stop. And he kept riding Michigan State players for the same things. And here's where it kind of, I get Joe's point. He doesn't use statistical evidence to back up any of his points. They're just like how he views the game, which a lot of the time I thought was fairly accurate, you know, coming in, at least before I really investigated Dan Dockich, the announcer.
He's probably listening to this podcast. He probably gets alerts when it's
Hey, Dan. Hey, Dan. Yeah, and then it comes like it's funny because everyone was like, as I think that's what kind of sparked is everyone was like, man, Dockich really hates Michigan State. He was just ripping on Michigan State for like being unprofessional and not classy and all this stupid coach speak. And so fans started to tweet at him, and they weren't, you know, using his handle. They were just saying Dockich this, and then he started responding to all of them, ripping on Michigan State. And it's like, all right, buddy. So not only are you taking time out of your day and your life and your professional career to respond to Michigan State people just to insult them, but you're so adamant about it that you're searching your own name on Twitter to do it. I think it's just like, it's unnecessary. I think, like you said, it's just a professionalism thing. And then really dropping, like, I mean, if there's one way to incite a Michigan State fan,
and Izzo,
it is by saying, and Izzo, well, 2 separate things here. First, the first thing to incite a Michigan State fan is to say they couldn't get into Michigan.
Yes. Well,
first of all, it's wildly, it's just wrong. And you've seen so many people come out on Twitter and be like, hey, I get into both schools. Like, you dick. Like, I'm smart. I chose to go to Michigan State. Like, it's that old, you know, that superiority angle that Michigan fans have played and will always play. So of course you're going to light a fire under a Michigan State fan doing that. But then the other part is, if you want Tom Izzo to react to something, do something stupid on social media, because he will take every single opportunity to rip social media a new one. And I think he's probably just licking his chops. Like, first of all, I'm sure he knows Dan Dockich is tough on his program. I'm sure he knows he's said some dumb things before. And then the fact that he was able to directly address the fact that he had done them on Twitter, Izzo was probably just like, oh, this is all of the stuff I've been waiting for to come together. I can't resist. So,
right. And this is, yeah,
it's just, I don't know if it was necessary for Izzo to go after him per se and like say those things, but you know, Tom's never been one to hold his tongue. And I just think the convergence of all those factors was too much for him to hold back. So I don't mind him as an announcer. I think he just needs to show a little, just kind of like back away, like step away from the Twitter. You know, maybe tweet less. Don't search your name so much. Just sort of be a little bit better. You get paid a lot of money and you get a lot of screen time to do a job that millions of people would kill for. Just kind of act like it, I guess.
You know, I always never totally agreed with Izzo on the social media thing and him saying why he never do it and he'd think it's only bad. And I was like, no, I think there's a lot of positives that even Izzo would take from it. But I think this Dockich situation has made me realize that no, he wouldn't, because he would absolutely be searching that mentions column, and it would be
Izzo?
He wouldn't. I don't think Izzo would be able to control himself from looking at the mentions, and it would just get to him. So
it's a better world that Tom Izzo is now.
I now agree that Tom Izzo should not be on Twitter. So that's what that is. I also, there was a big MSU response. I got into both schools, blah 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 blah. And I just thought that the whole thing was kind of dumb. I mean, I get the whole
it was definitely
pride thing, but Izzo talking about it, I understand is going to take it to another level. But in general, don't feed the trolls. Like that's the whole point. You have these same people who for 10 years have complained about Skip Bayless and called him out for things he got wrong, and see the stupid thing Skip Bayless said. I can't believe he's getting $5 million at Fox Sports. You are the reason he's getting that money.
Right.
That's the whole point, is to incite you. And Dockich is a little different because he is an in-game analyst. And if Skip Bayless was calling games, I think it'd be a little bit different. But when he's on Twitter, when he's in his shock jock role, the point is to incite you. He's not there to have meaningful conversations. I like to have meaningful conversations on Twitter and have had with many people about many issues not related to the sports. But he's not. And there's a lot of people that aren't. And anytime you see him or any Michigan fan making a joke about MSU academics or something like that, you just got to let it go, because they are literally trying to get you upset. And if you get upset, that's the point. You can't come back You can't come back with, I got into both schools, actually I'm smart. You're just proving that you're insecure. That's not the whole point, is to upset you. And I think I've early on in my Twitter career, I think sometimes I would give into trolls, but I really no longer do ever, because it never, ever, ever ends well, ever. So
I got into an argument with Greg Henson one time. I learned my lesson.
You all know the certain people out there that are just out there to incite you. So
I think the Tom Izzo tweeting rule book would be never tweet.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty much it.
I'm not anti-Twitter, and I certainly don't receive the amount of harassment that other people do, because I'm a white guy. I don't have to deal with a lot of the other stuff, and maybe it would get to me if I did, but if I received more of that. But I think one reason I do get less of that is because I don't set out to troll people. Say, oh, Michigan
Yeah.
did this, Michigan State did this, because it's not even fun. Like maybe because I'm older and more mature now, but
Yeah,
it's not even fun. Like it's I love being on Twitter because I see different perspectives and different views on things, and that's what I take from social media. But there's so many people who use it to just get upset or to confirm biases. So there's good and bad in it all, but you got to know that Dakich is just trying to upset you. And anybody listening to this podcast, which is from what it looks like in the numbers, in the 400s, 500s, which thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. You don't need to reply to Dakich on Twitter. You don't need to get upset with it. You just got to, I don't want to say suck it up, but just don't even let it enter your thing. And eventually you kind of build up a
tolerance.
Yeah, and it just kind of brushes away. So that's my thought on
Some sage wisdom right there.
Dakich Ghazi. So
Dakich Ghazi. Dakich Gate.
yeah.
I like that.
Let's see. Anything else that we missed you wanted to talk about?
Real quickly, because I gotta run here. My busy life just never seems to stop. But the one I would be remiss if I didn't mention. I was looking at the schedule. The one win it's standing out at me. The one game that Michigan State really let it get away. That if they drop and they kind of falter here down the stretch, or they don't get in with the record that people think will get them in, it's going to be that Arizona loss, the first game of the season.
Yeah,
because that would be a win over a top 10 team right now. They didn't have Trier, but they were up big in that game, and that it's games like that you're going to look back at if they don't get in that could hurt. But like we said, they got a very winnable stretch here. It's all in front of them, and hopefully they surprise us this weekend. But that's about all I got.
Yep, and we will couple big weeks coming up, and we'll talk to you each one, including after the Purdue game, which they will probably lose, and maybe it'll be a short podcast because there won't be much to say if they get blown out like we thought, but maybe there will be something, so I don't know. So thanks Austin for coming back to do this. Thanks everybody for listening.
Anytime.
Make sure you're checking out theonlycolors.com. Austin's got great previews, everything going up there. Be part of the conversation, everything. I'm Chris Fanini again. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week. See you.